All right, so we have Luke there in the background, who you may or may not be able to
Yes.
see, but Luke Skywalker. So he'll be maybe he'll make a guest appearance, but we'll see. So I'm chatting here with Rin, who is one of my players here on my Sunday night D&D game. I've been playing with us for almost about a year now, 9 months, something like that, right? A little while.
A little bit over a year because I just posted a year drawing of Licia
Oh, that's right.
and
That's right. Okay. Yeah, and I saw that your 1 year update with her. So okay, and tonight, um, so Rin, welcome to Always Level One playlists, where I sit down and have a chat with someone from getting a player's perspective, whether it's someone I actually game with or not, a player's perspective on different components of role-playing games, whether it be a broad stroke like we're going to talk about tonight, or something more focused and a specific topic. But so, for those who may not know you, because not everyone, no one really watches our live stream games. For those who may not know you but might actually watch this, take a second, if you would, to introduce yourself.
hi, my name is Rin. I love to cosplay, play D&D, and I just started getting into LARPing. And I definitely have a love for the nerd culture and everything. I've definitely been doing this for a couple of years now and enjoying so much of it. And I even was introduced to 1E when it comes to D&D and everything. So it's been a wonderful experience, and I've just been enjoying it the entire time.
All right, since you brought that up, what was your start in role-playing games?
My start would have to be 5E. I know that me and my friends got together around COVID times, and we had a campaign that we started actually right before COVID, and it ended up going into a more digital aspect during the quarantine and everything. And we had a campaign that we started, and we even did one shot together, and we created two different characters for both campaigns, but unfortunately we fizzled out, and the ever known obstacle of always pushing off a scheduled event, and it just never got scheduled. And I will forever be sad because I really enjoyed that character. She was my first character ever created, and she definitely took a turn because I had an idea set in mind when I created her, only for her to completely turn turn right and go topsy turvy on me.
So,
And it was definitely experience.
so has that group of players ever kind of like reconvened to resume the game or start another one?
We have not. It's a combination of some of the friend group left. Some of us are still on speaking terms, but we just haven't gotten together on a clear schedule. We all drifted. We used to all work in one department together, and we have since transferred departments since then, and we all have different work schedules now. So it was a combination of some people have left the friend group, some of them are still talking, but we still don't have a cohesive schedule to really sit down and play all together that everybody has off.
That term always amuses me. My daughter uses it too. Friend group, friend group. It's not a term my generation is familiar with. All right. So and then from that dissolvement, is that a word? Dissolving. Um, and that was kind of COVID-ish or shortly thereafter. Then you must have had a dry spell, a little hiatus for a couple of years until I found you on Facebook.
Yes, I had a couple of year dry spell, and I remember getting into Ren fairs around that time, and that's when I started to really. I've always been a cosplayer since early 2008, middle school era for me, and to high school, and that's when I started cosplaying, and it really took my love for D&D that I found and kind of had a cosplay aspect because you got to dress up and everything. I put on the elf ears, and I went to a couple Ren fairs during that time period, and I remember just sitting there going, "Man, I want to really play D&D again. I just really want to play." So I had joined a few Facebook groups, which is where I met you. But right before you, I joined in two other campaigns, both 5e. And while one of them was a one shot and good and done, the other one was a more in depth kind of storyline. And while I would meet every week with them and it was a scheduled week and everything, there was just something about the storyline. I wasn't Eventually I stopped having as much fun, and that's when I met you and I started having a lot of more fun with our current group and everything. So I respectfully backed away from that particular group and found that I really had a passion for 1E as opposed to 5E.
I will say, and we're not going to go. This is not what we're talking about tonight, and I'm not going to be an additionist tonight. But I have found that like everyone who I really get an opportunity to expose to and introduce to 1E, I'd say 80+% get on board with that kind of old school, hardcore, rough and tough, nitty gritty. Oh my God, I might die, kind of D&D game. So, all right, so help us understand, because not all of us know, and it's a little gray for me. What is the difference? No, no, I'm going to hold that for a second. Okay, so you started doing a little 5e, so that could okay, but it really started in middle school, high school, with the Ren fairs, the Renaissance fairs, which
Cosplay conventions first.
okay,
It was
cosplay
cosplay conventions.
conventions first, okay, and then some Ren fairs, Renaissance fairs, which I've always enjoyed. Um, because it's kind of pseudo medieval period, and for some reason I've even as a child I've always had an interest in that period, swords and armor and sorcery, and well, that's the fantasy side, um, and knights and medieval warfare. Like it's just that time period has always interested me, like kind of a little before the technology break, or whatever historical time period to be subsequent to that, and it was always of interest to me. And then I had got a little exposure to D&D, watching my older brother play, and then the Renaissance fairs. I'm not even sure how I found it, but I found it, and I started going to my local one, in state, every year for a few years. So I'm familiar with what a Renaissance fair is, which is a kind of almost like a regular fair, like you go to like the county fair or state fair, but they don't really have rides generally. But they put on shows and people kind of dress in period attire, and you got a lot of the merchants and shops that are selling kind of sort of period type gadgets and gizmos and clothing and jewelry and things like that. And the jester type performers. So that's for those who might not be familiar with the Ren Fair, Renaissance Fair. That's in a nutshell. That's what a Ren Fair is, and
Yes,
you
it's
might you
very
might get
laid
lucky
back.
with even a like period food, right? Every so often. Um, but anyway,
Turkey legs.
yeah, turkey legs are everywhere. Okay, yeah, but that's very common at the Ren fairs.
Yes, it
Turkey
is.
legs, and like roasted corn on the cob, and anyway. All right, so you kind of got started with that, the cosplay and the Ren fairs. Now, help me, and for those of us who don't know, further explain, if you would, between what is cosplay and what is LARPing. LARP, LARP, LARPing.
So, LARPing stands for live action role playing. So, the idea of cosplaying is, at least to me, is dressing up as a favorite character and just embodying that character. You don't actually have to role play to cosplay. A lot of people think you do. You don't actually have to. Cosplaying is basically, in my opinion, dressing up like trick or treating for adults. Instead of getting candy, you're just spending money because you're going to go to a large convention. You're going to dress up in your favorite costumes. You're going to show off. Either you create the costumes like you did when you were younger, your parents did for you when you were younger, or you buy them. I personally buy them because I am not talented at sewing. I tried, I really, really tried. I couldn't even sew an apron together. It was pretty bad. I actually met Stan Lee in that attempt of an apron and I was very embarrassed to
Tent
do
opening.
so. So, but cosplaying in itself is just dressing up as a character that you enjoy, you care for, and going and attending either a convention. You don't even have to go to a convention to cosplay. I know that I have cosplayed out in public. One of my favorite things is to honestly see people in public in my cosplays because I get so many weird looks. People will do that double take at you, and everybody's like, what in the world are they wearing? Or if you're a very recognizable character, sometimes you have little kids come up to you. I've dressed up as Disney characters before. So I've had little girls come up to me when I'm dressed as a Disney princess going, oh my gosh, it's Anna or Rapunzel or anything like that. So it's little things like that. It's the main costume aspect of cosplay is going to be being in that character's costume. You don't exactly have to be high quality or it's not a competition, though there are competitions in the world. This is more of just dress up, have fun, basically like Halloween for adults is the best way I can describe it. Now, LARPing, which I have just very recently got into this past year, is kind of a combination of D&D meets cosplay, and the live action role playing is going to be playing, it's almost like you're playing a D&D game, but instead of rolling die or imagining your scenarios or talking them over, you're physically living them. Now, I joined a well-known uh, LARP called Heinefall. It is in Texas, and it is a giant community. If you are watching this and you are interested in something like that, I highly recommend it. It's very beginner friendly and everything. You don't have to have a character backstory to start off with, which is sometimes common in live action role playing. They'll have a character sheet, kind of like D&D. If you've ever played it, you have to create a character. And this particular live action role play is going to be a medieval base that I'm going in. But live action role playing or LARPing can be any type of fantasy. There are fantasies for Harry Potter, there's LARPs for Harry Potter, there's LARPs for steampunk, there's LARPs for any type of sci fi or any type of fantasy that you can imagine. If you Google it saying so and so LARP, you will find it. So it's definitely, I feel like cosplay and LARPing and D&D are all kind of a similar bridge, with cosplay kind of being in between LARPing and D&D. So basically it's kind of like a step ladder. You're going to start off with dressing in your garb. So like I'm going to say a lot of things that are more medieval themed because that's the particular LARP that I'm going to be joining and going to in a couple of weeks. So that's where my mind is. But keep in mind that this is open to anything, any type of fantasy world that you are interested in. But our garb is going to be in character for the story. So the LARP that I go to will always be set in medieval times. We do not have any technology whatsoever in this fantasy because we're trying to create that fantasy in person. So instead of say you just walk around, one thing that I found a little bit lacking at Renaissance fairs is even though you have some people in the garb and everything, you are very much still in modern times because will see people outside of costumes. They'll have their phones out. There's technologies, there's ATMs. Not to say that there aren't some of those aspects in a LARP because we do exist in the modern day and age, but for the most part, from what I've experienced, everything kind of takes a step back and we immerse ourselves into that fantasy
and
physically.
and that's the word. That's what I actually just wrote down: immersion or immersive. So okay, so I understand the difference. Thank you for explaining that for us. But to what extent is the live action role play? When we sit down on our Sunday game and we play Dungeons and Dragons here on Discord, or even if we were to play in person, no one's wearing their armor, no one's breaking out a sword and shield, right? No one's swinging at each other, and I, as the DM, act as the referee, the coach, the mediator, the rules lawyer, what have you. But you and the girls, as the players, are kind of narrating the characters or navigating the characters through the story that's organically evolving as every minute passes during our gameplay. There's no set story. We've we're slowly forming like a greater overall story arc slowly, because even that wasn't predefined when we started. So it's kind of just happening, right? But with your live action role play, are you physically combating others? Is there an overall? Is there a story behind it? These are the good guys. These are the bad guys. Is there a political tug of war between this group and that group? Can you expand a little more on that, just so we can understand what live action role play is?
Absolutely. So the fun thing about live action role playing, it is almost identical to what you just explained our D&D group is. But while there is a little bit of a story baseline to create it, at least in Heinefall that I go to, there is complete open book for any person to create the narrative that they want. However, when it comes to combat, we aren't going to be rolling die. We're actually going to be playing out these battles. We actually have foam swords, foam daggers, foam arrows, crossbows, you name it. They do go through an extensive weapons check because safety is always key. You always want to be safe. And when we're choreographing these battles, they are going to be fought in real time and everything, but again, keeping safety in mind, they aren't going to be full force blows. So there are complete battles that are going to be person on person, and they're going to be tapping themselves with the armor, the shields, the swords, you name it, and they are going to actually be fighting. Now, when it comes to how the hit points work in the games, it does depend LARP to LARP. Now, the more extensive the LARP is, the more experienced, you're going to have more in-depth rules. I'm going to focus mostly on Heinefall because that is the LARP that I'm part of, and I am actually actively going to. So those are the rules that I'm familiar with. So if you are more familiar with other LARPs, this may be a little bit different, but at least from my understanding and knowledge, the way that it goes is we have hit points towards our body. So every part of the body has one hit point, whether it be your head, your torso, your arms, and your legs. So one hit is going to be 1 point down. Now, we all have one hit point per area, but that would be a very short battle. That's where armor and everything comes into play, where you're going to have your light armor, your chainmail, your steel armor, and everything. So every step up, whether it be light armor, medium armor, or heavy armor, is going to give you extra points for your hit points. And essentially, one thing that we do for combat is once you're down hit points and say your arm, you're going to lose your arm. While you aren't physically going to lose your arm in real life, you are never going to be able to use that arm again until it gets healed or until the battle is over because you have effectively lost that arm. So you're role playing that you no longer have that
So
arm.
how do
And
you keep
so
track of the hit points? Okay, for those who don't know, hit points, maybe in a video game setting, you'll see them labeled as HP or just health points or like a little health bar. And your bar is full as you get hit and take physical damage. the bar kind of gets smaller and smaller and smaller until you get down to nothing and you be dead. So health points is another term that people might be familiar with in a video game type setting. But so how do you keep track of those points? If I have 10 hit points and I get hit and hit, do I have to keep this mental math in my head?
Yes and no. What I've found in a lot of LARP systems is it's a lot of honor-based system. So you are in charge of counting your own hits. However, you also have to understand that when you're attacking people and there's an actual battle going on, you're not going to be able to register everything, especially if you're going to be tapping lightly and say someone has full chainmail on and you tap them very lightly, they're not going to feel it. So it's an honor system from what I've seen and played, but at the same time, it is up to you. There's usually going to be a battle steward or an overseer or a game master that's going to be overseeing the battle, making sure people are following the rules, but um high value of personal honor system is you're going to be trusting your fellow players to be playing fair and you want to play fair
Okay,
as
so
well.
it is mental math. There's no like actual sort of tracking system, no sort of mechanical mechanism to keep track of that. Okay, and when you go to zero, you dead. You role play dead, right?
Yes, so at least in our in Heinefall, you have two different things that you can do when you're down. You can either role play that you are dead, or you can have a healer come out and heal you with their magic and everything, or you can leave the battlefield and go to a respawn point, very similar to a respawn of a video game. So you will have to walk out of the battle, go a certain length away, tap the respawn point, and then you can rejoin the battle. It's kind of like a quick save event if you're familiar with video games and everything. So it's kind of a combination of the two.
Okay. Um, and how do you think? Since I lost my other thought in there, how do you think this? I don't want to say ties into role playing game, like actual a role playing game, not a LARPing. Uh, Sit down at a table, a tabletop. That's what we call them now, tabletop role playing games. Okay, another soapbox I won't get on, but um, a tabletop role playing game where you sit down with a physical table with your friends or whoever, or a digital table like we do here on Discord, and you play your game. So, does one foster the other for you?
I
Do,
think
do you
so,
find a lot of
yes.
people who LARP are role players as well?
Absolutely. I do think that there is it's almost like a Venn diagram. There's going to be a lot of overlap between the fan bases of uh, role players and then the people who are playing tabletop, because essentially we are all interested in creating that fantasy. The only difference that I've personally found is that one is more imaginative and one is more physical.
Yeah, obviously, if you're doing a tabletop or tabletop role playing game, that's going to be much more imaginative. And while you might have minis and terrains and stuff to give you a visual representation, there's no physical. No one's breaking out their weapon or their shield or obviously magic, right? That's it's all completely imaginative. So yeah, okay, all right, I got you. So you find that a lot of people who LARP are actual role plays of some genre of role playing game, and I'm sure that's a much higher percentage there than it is the opposite of those who play RPGs, role playing games, are LARPers. Because I think there are much higher percentage of people who play role playing games who don't LARP. A lot don't even know what that even is, let alone that it even
Exactly.
exists.
I kind of view it as a stepping stone because I started off as cosplaying, then I got into a little bit of the role play aspect with D&D, and then I decided to go full nerd and went straight for LARPing because now that D&D is a bit more mainstream and more people know about it, it's not as nerdy, while LARPing is the new D&D in a way.
It is kind of. yeah, the new heightened nerdiness. But I do like, and that's you kind of read my mind when you use the word immersive. That I think it is obviously the experience of it is very immersive, right? And that's something that or Julie and I have talked about is how do you make your D&D game or your role playing game, whatever that is, more immersive, right? So you feel there, and that's what a Ren Fair and the cosplay offers. Like it feels like you're there, like you're actually in it, and obviously the lopping you kind of are in it, right? So you kind of insert yourself into that environment, and when we're at sitting at a table, like for I have an in-game person on Friday nights. We're in the back of the game store. There's lots of other people around. This kind of big open room, all kinds of noise, bright lights, and like it's not immersive at all. So it's very difficult for me to make that immersive in any way. But if I was sitting here, excuse me, at my house or your house and we're playing, and it's a much more controlled and smaller environment, there are things you can do to make it more immersive, and I think that adds a lot of flavor to the experience. So I can only imagine that when you go and be all nerdy and be a lopper and have an amazing time with it, and then kind of come back to reality and then stop playing D&D again, I'm sure in a sense that you kind of pull some of that immersion with you in your mind, and slowly a little blurb of a picture in your mental picture here, an experience you had pops up and over here and over there, and vice versa. I'm sure when you're LARPing, you think, oh my god, remember when we entangled those goblins and we just started blowing them up and killing them all, and I'm sure these memories, these thoughts kind of bounce back and forth, as because you have that immersion and all that triggers.
Exactly. And I find that there's ways to be immersive inside D&D. However, it's not so much uh you're more focused on the narrative and storytelling aspect as the dungeon master or as the player themselves. The way your immersion is going to be based on completely on that storytelling. While something like a LARP, you're going to have the costumes, the atmosphere, so there are things that help out with the immersion. While it's not exactly a limitation for D&D, you have to physically create it when you're role playing at tabletop as opposed to role playing in person.
Now, but are you saying that because when we're in person or in tabletop, we have to make a concerted effort to do that. We have to kind of create that environment. Are you saying that because when you go to LARPing, like it's just there, it's part of the experience. You're kind of inserting yourself into that environment, but someone still has created that environment for you, right? So
Yes.
the DM, so to speak, the organizers, have taken the time, the effort, the resources to create that environment for you. So someone has still kind of created that. It hasn't been there for the past 1,000 years, and you just you just walked into it.
Yo, absolutely. There's still a lot of work that goes into it. Just now, the LARP that I'm going to is technically starting on the 11th of November, and there's people already setting up buildings and building tents this week. So it's not so much that one has the build while one doesn't. It's more of a physical representation. So, for example, when you're LARPing, there's a more visual aspect that is missing in D&D when you are doing a tabletop or a virtual tabletop, because that visual aspect, because you have your five senses. You have your you got sight, smell, taste, touch, and everything. And there's going to be, while you can imagine those aspects at a tabletop or a digital, you're not going to have all of the five senses. You're going to have to rely a little bit more heavily on the imaginative aspects. While as opposed to being in a LARPing situation, you're going to be in the middle of the woods. You are going to be out there in the heat, and you are going to be physically battling with people. You are going to physically be embodying the character that you create. I know that when I first started role playing and playing D&D, one of the hardest aspects that I ever faced was trying to become my character, because there's sometimes that there are people who play the character like they are themselves the character, or there's some people who play it where they're kind of playing a video game character. They see themselves as a different entity than their actual character that they're playing, and they're just kind of a puppeteer making them make choices. And I always owed the line in between the two of them. And when you're LARPing, you don't really have that ability to step back and puppeteer your own body. You have to embody that character to the fullest extent.
So it really forces you to role play.
Exactly.
Yeah, because and we see that a lot in D and D or role playing games. You see it a lot in D and D, especially with newer players. And I don't mean just new to the game. People who haven't had much experience with the game. Okay, that they can't differentiate between. They don't really understand what role playing is, right? They just think, oh, we kind of like acted out, we improv it out. No, role playing is not being you. I play as someone else. I might act. Well, I'm going to act as that someone else. So I might do things that I wouldn't do. I might say things that I wouldn't say, and it's all in character. This pseudo fictitious character that I'm role playing or acting as, right? So since I mentioned this, is what I was thinking of earlier. Since I just said acting, I reminded myself. So earlier, talking about this cosplay, LARPing, before we get back to our actual RPG games here, um, you said that it's organized. It can be small, it can be big, but there are organizers. You have physical melee, physical combat scenarios, whether that be small, one-on-one with someone, or this massive army versus army type thing, whatever it may be. And I had asked about, is it more to it than just that? There are political factions, over here and here, tug of war kind of thing, like who's the king, what kind of politics, and all this stuff. So, is there for those type things, since you're not the adventurer or the knight or the warrior, or whatever, is there like an actual cast that's kind of, I don't mean behind the scenes, the cast member kind of thing, like at Disney you got a cast member which can be any position. I'm not talking the people who are in the background organizing and running the show, but in the live action role play, is there an actual cast? Do they have a script? Do they have their own little story that they kind of fueling the others with?
Yes. So a lot of LARPs are going to incorporate NPC shifts, so non-playable characters for those who are more video game focused. So NPCs are going to be those plot point characters that are going to help either through dialogue create quests. They're going to be the big bad villain that everybody rallies against. At least in Heinefall, there are going to be NPC shifts for you to play as monsters, as so you're kind of volunteering. You're stepping out of your own character that you've created, and you're playing a character that's pre-created for you. So you are physically going to be the NPC of the LARP to help maintain the story in aspects. So how they utilize NPCs is going to be a little bit more focused based on what particular LARP you're going to go to, but a lot of them will have scripted moments. They will have scripted characters and everything, and it's usually a volunteer-based system, or they will have cast members who are physically trained to perform this role for you to drive the story along.
Okay, so that means that there is some actual role playing that can transpire between these NPCs, right, and you, the player character, you role playing whatever character you have created. Although it may be somewhat scripted from the NPC side of things, there is some interactions between these characters. Now, since you brought it up, and that kind of dovetails into video games, that I will say for me, a video game. I'm yet to see a video game that is a role playing game, and I don't think we're going to see that until AI becomes more heavily integrated into video games. So I'm sure it's coming, but is not there yet. And I say that because while Baldur's Gate BG3 now, Baldur's Gate 3, is by far the most popular role playing game, um, I argue that it's not, and I'll explain here in a second. But um, and I'll since I've gone this direction now, my gripe with the TTRPG, tabletop role playing games, or that phrase, is in the 60s and 70s when role playing games came into existence, they were called role playing games. You sat there, the internet wasn't there, your laptop and Discord didn't exist, so you sat down at a table with your friends and you role played this game, a role playing game. So somehow some game designer thought they came up with a role playing game and they wrote the code for the game with a bunch of if then statements. And now they call that a role playing game, and our role playing games have now been qualified as tabletop role playing games. And as an old school D&D RPGer, role playing gamer, I think that the actual role playing game should be just RPGs, and the Baldur's Gate should be a VRPG. I don't know why they assumed the title, the video games assumed the title, and recoined the original. To me, that doesn't seem right. But it doesn't
That's
really
fair.
matter. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. But as an old school guy who wants to stick to my old school stuff, yeah, I don't like that. All right, so the reason why I say video games are not real RPGs, because, and I played Baldur's Gate probably for a handful of hours, and that was as much as I could do. Um, is the reason I say that
Didn't
is
even make it
because
to Act Two.
it's just a bunch of if then statements, right? Someone who designed the game wrote the code that said, if Licia, if your character talks to this guy, then present them with these four options of what they want to say. If they choose option one, then the NPC says this. If they choose option two, the NPC says this. So you're just choosing from a list of options, no different than having come into a four-way intersection in your whatever racing game, I don't know, and you can turn left, right, or go straight or go back. It's kind of the same thing, except that they put text to that interaction or that decision that you've made. But you're not interacting really with the computer. That would require like a higher level of AI. You're not really interacting with another person while you're playing. So there's no actual role playing. You're role playing in the sense that I created this character and I'm playing that character, but you're not really socializing. You're not really role playing that out. You're just choosing from a list of options. Conversely, when you play an actual role playing game, you sit down at your physical table or our Discord table and we play D&D. You can do and say whatever your character wants at any time, right? I don't present you with, or very rarely do I present you with options. And what I do is just to kind of nudge you guys along, right? But you can choose and say, do whatever you want. There's no list, there's no options, there's no restrictions. You do it, and we go from there, and that kind of guides the story. You're not restricted to what the programmer thought would be appropriate. So that's kind of my argument as to why these video role playing games, these VRPGs, are not role playing games at all.
By that definition, The Sims might be the closest to an RPG then because it is an open world based
Or
sim.
even like a Grand Theft Auto type thing, right? When you got the whole world and you can kind of go about and do anything you want,
Hmm.
right? But at that point, though, you're not really interacting. You're still not interacting, though. I have more free reign of actions I want to take, but in terms of interacting with other people, creatures in that world, it's still restricted to what the coder thought, right? I can say, oh, I want to go beat this guy up. Well, how does he react? Well, that's coded in some way, some sort of algorithm they came up with, some sort of formula that if I hit the guy this hard, he reacts this way. If I only hit him this hard, he might react that way. Or if I hit him at all, he's going to automatically turn around and try to hit me back, kind of thing. And then they use random number generators perhaps to determine if I hit or how hard I hit, all this other stuff. So it's still encoding, it's still a computer program. And even a random number in a computer is not really random if you really talk to you really get into the nitty gritty of technology, it's not random. Um, Rolling a die is more random than the computer generated random number. Um, so I think like a Grand Theft Auto, or there's a newer one that's more sci-fi or fantasy. That's more
Uh,
open world.
I am literally thinking of it right now and I've forgotten the name. Uh,
Does it start with an S? Anyway,
well, there's Skyrim,
okay,
but
that's the one I was thinking of, and I've never
oh,
seen Skyrim. I've never
that
played
one's
it.
definitely not new.
I
That's
don't
been
know
out
anything
for a
about it, but
while.
it's very open world though, isn't it?
Yes,
Okay,
it's very open
so
world.
you can go about and do whatever you want, but it still comes down to the coding as to how what happens when you interact with these objects, these people, these vehicles, whatever it is. But yeah, I agree. Like that's getting closer because it's just not giving me a drop down list and I have to choose from these four options. And it's not an if then statement in that sense where it's very obvious what that if then statement is. Um, but yeah, so that's my argument against these VRPGs because they're really not RPGs. And I know everyone loves them and they're enjoyable games. I get it, and it can kind of help you. Excuse me. It can be a gateway into actual role playing games because they kind of get a taste of the genre and the fantasy behind it. And of course, with a video game, you get all the visuals because it's a video game, so you don't have to use your imagination, which in a sense I think is unfortunate. But I get it. It's a start. It's a gateway. And then when you get into that actual RPG, you have to use your imagination some. Sometimes more than others, right? If you're at a physical tabletop like Erica does, and she's got all kinds of minis and terrain and stuff, I don't have to use my imagination as much. But I still have to use my imagination because those little minis are not actually fighting each other. So if I so desire, I can kind of visualize how my character swung the sword or land that crushing blow, whatever it may be, or even to kind of, visualize the terrain and the environment if I so desire. Now, you could certainly argue that, I'm not interested in that. I want to play. I want to get into the mechanics of things, right? I want to fight. I want to roll my die. I want to manage my inventory. And for some people, that's the aspect they like. So they don't care about the whole environmental stuff. They don't care about all those descriptors. And that's kind of more me. When I play these video games, I'm like, cut through, cut through, cut through. I don't care about the story. Just skip, 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 skip. I just want to play. That's the kind of video gamer I am. And I think that's because I'm the generation who grew up with the original video games. Like my first game system was the Atari 2600. There was no story. There was no save. There was no come back and play later. There was no respawn points. You played until you died or until mom called you for dinner. Oh, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Because you can't save your game and you're doing so well. But there was no story. I just want to click through and I want to play. Like I enjoy playing Halo. I know that's an old game now, but I enjoyed playing Halo. And because it's a run around and shoot 'em up kind of game. I didn't care there's a freaking story behind it. It had no bearing on who I was going to really shoot or why. I just want to go around and shoot stuff and blow stuff up. But for those who like the more the story based aspect of the game, then yes, they want to hear all that description. They want to hear the story, and they want to buy into that story. And sometimes the actual gameplay, the mechanic side of things, comes secondary to that. But even for those of us who are more heavy on the mechanics, and with us playing on Discord, and we don't use any fancy these virtual tabletop tools that are available, we're more what they call theater of the minds, where we have to use our imagination for our own personal immersion, right? And since we play digitally on Discord, there's not much I can do to support that immersion for you other than to try to be a little descriptive. I can't play but so much sound effects um, because sometimes I don't have them, and it's another thing for me to coordinate. It's not practical sometimes. I can't light a candle to create the scent for one of your five senses, right? I can't burn a candle for you guys to smell it halfway around the world while it's sitting here next to me on my desktop, right? That's not going to work. So it comes down to me describing everything. Excuse me, me as the DM describing everything, and allowing your imagination to run with it. But and this is the aspect I love about the game. The expression is a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So I can turn over here and take a picture of my closet door frame in the closet, and I can send it to you, and you see exactly what I see, right? Or I can use 1,000 words to try to paint that picture for you, and in your mind, it's still not going to look like that picture that I sent you, right? I might get close if I'm really good at it, and I use 1,000 words. I don't know if I know 1,000 words, but I might get close. But if I use those same 1,000 words to describe it to Erica, her picture might be close as well, but it's a little bit different than yours, right? So we all are, while we're playing the same game, we're all playing a different game. And that's one of the things I love about the theater of the mind aspect of our RPGs. And even more so when we talk about it after the game, or you go back and you tell your friends on Monday what happened Sunday night. You describe it how it happened in your mind, right? Not how what everyone else happens. They have their own little story to tell. Not only just from their perspective, but how they imagined that encounter happened, or what that guy looked like, right? So that's what I love about about role playing games. Not the fantasy aspect in terms of the time period or anything, but that we're all playing the same game, but we're all playing a different game.
Hmm.
That's what I love about it. And with the live action role play, well, that kind of goes out the window a little bit, not completely,
Yes and
because
no.
you all have a different experience while you're there, right? So
Hmm.
you're all going to have your own war stories to tell, so to speak. And you may not have experienced the whole thing because you're over here with your group or your family or whatever. And you may not have gone over there. You have no idea what happened. You only hear through the grapevine what happened over there. So we all have a different experiences, even in the live action role play. But and while it gives you the physical immersion, like you talked about, all your five senses, and it's harder to do that when we're playing a role playing game in person. No one's really trying to kill each other because we're just right here. It's a different way to create that immersion, and you're not going to get that same type of immersion as you would with live action role play. But do you feel though, now that I've gone on my 10-minute rant here, um, and I appreciate your self control to let me run with it. Um, Turning it back to you though, Rin. How do you feel? Okay, when did BG3 come out? Did that come out like before you started playing Fifth Edition?
Uh,
Was
it
that
came
truly your
out.
gateway?
No, so Baldur's Gate 3 came out after I started playing 5th edition. It was before I met you. A little, I want to say it came out after COVID and everything, and I'm still obsessed with it. I romanced Astarion first, and I've even met the actor and everything, and then I'm romancing Gale, but uh just I could go on and on. I just I will refuse to kill the owl bear though, because I can't do that to my owl bear cub. I can't kill his mom.
All right. Okay. So didn't it come out for you? It came out after you were introduced, excuse me, to D&D. Okay. Um, but from what when I'm trying to find Facebook D&D group finder groups, um, I find that a lot of people, new people, oh, I've never played before kind of people, say, oh, I've never played before, but I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3. I've been ran through the whole game like 5 times. And they seem to say that like, I'm not saying it's like a negative way, but they say that like proudly that like, hey, I know what this is about. I can role play kind of thing. Or I'm familiar enough with the mechanics, like it'll be a smooth transition in. So
It's definitely a smoother transition into 5e than it is to 1e. I know that especially I remember playing it and getting really in depth, and when I watched the D&D movie, I realized just how many locations and that were similar and names and stuff that were, and I was like, "Oh, I understood that reference. I understood that reference." So yes, there is a little bit of a gateway, but I can see what you're also saying. That there's, I think it's more of a springboard to let you in and kind of helps push you into it than fully immersing yourself into it.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it helps to understand some of the mechanics and the like the turn-based combat. While I don't think your roll for initiative in the game, the computer kind of determines that for you, right? Who goes first based upon
Technically, it rolls, but it's yeah.
yeah. Um, but as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't help you with the role play really, because now when I'm playing a RPG, I have to role play with actual other people. I have to talk to people, right? And on a video game, I don't. Again, I just click, choose from the list, click, click, and I don't have to do that. All those things are chosen for me. Now, some people can kind of embrace that, and they have strong enough social skills on a personal level that they can kind of let that kind of smooth them into actual role playing. But you know as well as I, many who are drawn to this game can be socially awkward, right? Or neurodivergent, or whatever politically correct terminology we use today. I'm not politically correct, but I know we use the term here around many D&D or RPGers. And we're nerdy, and I know that I'm the dork, nerd, whatever. But I'm definitely in that scope of the nerdy guy, dorky guy sometimes too. And but it draws a certain type of person oftentimes, not always, and I'm not stereotyping, but oftentimes it draws a certain type of person into the game. Now, in recent couple decades, that's kind of shifted a little bit, right? Where you have more normal people, non-nerds, non-geeks coming into this because it kind of has been normalized and more embraced
Mainstream.
by society, right? It's not the freak show, the satanic worship that it once believed that it was, when it first came out. People aren't kind of hiding in their basement in order to play. So you're getting more of the mainstream or normal people. But there's still plenty of people who are fit the old stereotypes, right? Whether it be the neurodivergent or just the nerd, right? Um, but so if you're playing the video game and you're socially awkward, you're still going to be socially awkward when you sit down at a table with people or on Discord or whatever, right? But if you're not that person, if you have reasonable social skills, then I think that would serve you better in terms of making that transition into role playing, the actual
Exactly.
like the social role play, not the game mechanics. The game mechanics I think Baldur's Gate will help you with getting into fifth edition, because the mechanics are kind of there. You see a lot of the similar spells and things like that, an action economy. But from the social side, if you're not social to begin with, it's not going to help you.
That's kind of why I like LARPing a lot because I believe it or not, I very much am socially awkward. I've always been. I always will be, most likely. And I definitely felt awkward my first couple times playing and everything. And even after playing for as many years as I have, it still feels awkward at times, but when you're LARPing and you're physically there, you're forced to be that have that socialization because you're physically there. While there you are conversing and socializing at a table RPG and everything, you still have that you still like you said you're surrounded by people of a similar nature and so sometimes you're going to fall back into your own familiar patterns and everything and like I mentioned briefly before there's different styles of playing the character and you can play more outside of the character rather than role playing in it while at live action role playing you're forced to be that socialization and that's where I've come to find that I learning more how to socialize in a physical sense has helped me role play in a more imaginative sense uh, on the tabletop and everything. You're muted still.
Interesting to hear you say that, because that's a whole other topic that we could talk about. Um, and I talked about it a little bit in a always level one video I made with Caleb. That like what the topic was, why do people play role playing games? And one of them was to to socialize. And hang on, I screwed up something here on Discord. Hang on. Okay. And like to hear you say that, like that's one of the benefits of playing a role playing game. You learn some social skills, right? Like on Friday night, I have a 13-year-old kid who's been playing with us a few times now, and we're in a social setting. That at the bar, one of the characters in the party went over to this NPC over here in the bar, sitting by herself, introduces himself, engages in some like introductory conversation, pulls up a chair, has a seat. I think maybe buys him a drink or something, trying to get information, right? The 13-year-old kid, his character just walks up and says, "Hi, I'm so and so," like in the middle of their conversation. Didn't understand that there's social etiquette, right? Yeah, it's a game, but we're role playing the game. That etiquette still exists, right? So he's learning. He's 13, right? He's learning, and not only is he learning the game, but he's learning social skills. So it helps people in a lot of aspects: social skills, confidence, and a lot of different things. Again, a whole other conversation. But yeah, it can definitely help with that for those who are perhaps a little socially awkward, and whether that be in a physical tabletop game, whether we're playing on Discord, and because you still have to interact with people, you have to talk to other people, or you're there in person and you're kind of forced to talk to other people. If I go to a Ren Fair, I don't have to talk to anyone. I
Nope.
don't. And if I'm willing to talk a little bit, it's because I want to go get something to eat and I have to tell them what I want, right? But you don't have to.
Those fried Oreos.
You don't have to interact with anyone. You can go sit down at the show, not talk to anyone around you, watch the show, walk away. But when you're in it to win it, you're in the live action role play, or you're sitting down at a table and role playing with your friends. Well, you have to talk, whether you're socially awkward or not. You're uncomfortable. You gotta push. It's a role playing game. So we're approaching actually almost an hour, believe it or not.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll give you one kind of closing example here, and I'll give you the last word in a moment. But um, the social aspect, right? Excuse me. There is a game, an in-person game that I'm aware of. Again, I'm choosing my words wisely here. And one of the players has chosen a character race, which I don't understand, which is a bird. Okay.
I know what that is.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Again, as an old school guy, like this is beyond my comprehension, but none.
It's fine.
Yeah. Nonetheless, okay. He, they're playing a bird. Okay. As a humanoid, I guess, not even demi. Anyway, and guess what? The bird can't talk in a way in which anyone else can understand because he's a bird.
Amazing.
Birds don't talk, right? So why would you choose? Well, I guess this is exactly why the kid did. Why would you choose a race in a role-playing game that can't talk to the other people?
Well, you have to be imaginative and find ways to communicate without talking.
Yeah, I think he chose it because he's socially awkward, and that was his way to like be present and play, but not kind of have to play to the
See,
same
I'm
extent.
already thinking of different ways to communicate as that character and
Well,
everything.
so that like, listen, as an experienced player or someone who's like really in it, yeah, that creates a challenge, right? And that's an obstacle, and I want to overcome it. I want to figure that out, and I got to come up with ways to communicate because someone's life and death can be on the line. I got to figure this out. Just like when they have personality flaws and traits, or they have this disability of some kind, right? I got to figure out how to work around it or with it. But I just suspect that he chose it because he just, yeah.
It may have been the safe bet, but I think that it's the job of the other players to try and break that comfort level that he may have used it as a safe option, but it's also a really good opportunity to push him past what his comfort zone is. And I think that it's the job of the other players and the DM to try and break that barrier a little bit.
I do not disagree with that at all, and I would be even more inclined to agree with it. Agree, strongly agree. Anyway, I mean, more inclined to like agree with that. Um, if it was like our group, when we have a group of five of us, right? We got four players and a DM. Okay, online, in person, we have a small, like a close knit group, right? And this one person, this player, chooses this really obscure character. But I'm talking at a table with 8 or 9 players who are all trying to get their moment in the spotlight and push the story forward ever so slowly. So anyway, I guess the point is it's a social role playing game. It's a social game, right? Like most games are that you play at a table with other people. Any game you play with other people, you have to socialize with them. At least for that period of time you're playing the game. So socialize, talk. We don't need to become best buddies, right? We don't need to become best friends. I don't need to help you move to your next apartment. But for the few hours where we come together to play the game, let's play the game and not just. So be social, people. All right, I want to give you the last word here, and I'll stop the video, and you and I will stay on and talk for another minute or two. But I'll give you the last word on the topic of Ren Fair, cosplay, LARPing, and RPGs. I guess and VRPGs. I want to call it that from now on. VRPGs and how they all kind of tie together and how they can kind of bridge or act as a springboard from one to the other. Ready? Go.
Honestly, they are so much more similar than a lot of people give them credit for because a lot of people think, oh, cosplay is for the hot people, or role playing, the tabletop is for the socially awkward people. Everybody, like the LARPers, are the crazy ones with running around with sticks in their hands as kids. No, the it's almost like a I brought this up earlier, a Venn diagram. It's closer to a full circle than you realize, than separate groups, because so many aspects of the immersion that you're going to be developing, whether it be through cosplay, whether it be through Ren fairs, whether it be through LARPing, it's so similar. I would definitely recommend, if you are fascinated or interested in any aspect of uh, role playing, whether it be for personal pleasure or for an actual game on a TRPG or VRPG aspect, I definitely recommend getting out there and going into something like that. I think that if you're a little more on the reserve side, start off at a Ren fair or a convention because you're not physically asked to role play or be a character just yet. Then make your way into D&D where you're going to invite yourself and start playing as a character, and then potentially go into LARPing and then use that LARPing knowledge to come back to D&D, and you will find that you are so much more socially ready than you were when you first started. You're muted again.
And on that, I want to stop recording here and wrap up. Always level one, the player's perspective, and that's it. And all right, Raina, we'll talk another time, and I will see you on Sunday for our bi-weekly first edition AD&D, the famous Gygaxian, the Keep on the Borderlands. All right, peace out, everyone. Have a good night.